didn't always know where he was going.
He had a great style for seduction.
Kind of a self-indulgent thing, you know. Get an Oscar, go get it.
And now, Bravo profiles Marlon Brando. His impact was shattering.
Just pure, raw, magnificent human behavior. And that was Marlon Brando. He changed all the rules. Nothing was ever going to be the same.
When I first saw Brando, it was a jolting experience, this new, fresh, revolutionary being. It was an instant education.
Get up, you scum-sucking pig.
No, physically he was very, very strong. He was at the gym all the time, getting those muscles gorgeous.
He had great animal magnetism, very sexy. We fell in love with that beauty as a generation.
He had a poet's face and a prizefighter's body.
He gave voice to the silent generation and embodied the complexities of life.
You have the two polarities of Brando, tremendous anger, animal-like passion. And then on the other hand, you have Marlon, the whimpering child in need of support, tenderness.
He is many people, depending on what he wants to be at any given moment.
Many believe that by donning so many masks on screen, Brando has sometimes failed to separate Brando the man from Brando the actor.
In the early days, the actors were called messengers of the gods. I think that you have to be careful which god or which level of consciousness you're going to explore.
One of the most brilliant artists and eccentric personalities of our era, at times Brando's life has seemed like a Shakespearean tragedy.
I think he's a truly tragic figure. As tragic as King Lear.
He was going to be the father of my grandchild.
It's a life that raises puzzling questions.
He's killing himself. Why is he doing this? Why did he give up being an authentic person? Where is that early poetry that let him reach out? Where is it?
Just as Brando's life has seen great joys as well as crushing tragedies, his career has lurched back and forth between Academy Awards and embarrassing flops. But from the beginning, his uncompromising search for personal and artistic truth has set him apart.
I don't know every mile of Marlon's journey, and they have not all been smooth, but they've all been interesting.
Brando's portrayal of the brutal yet vulnerable Stanley Kowalski in Tennessee Williams' play, A Streetcar Named Desire, changed acting forever. The play debuted on Broadway in 1947 and made Brando a star, able to call his own career shots by his mid-20s. Brando was directed first on stage and then 2 years later on screen by Elia Kazan.
The wonderful thing about him is the ambivalence between a soft, yearning, girlish side to him and a dissatisfaction that's violent and can be dangerous.
Don't you ever talk that way to me. Disgusting, vulgar, greasy. Who do you think you are, a couple of queens or something?
I think that the combination of the two, clashing, are what makes that a wonderful performance.
Streetcar is the story of Blanche, an aging Southern belle who visits her sister Stella and Stella's brutish husband, Stanley.
If you read that play, it's about Blanche. It's not about Stanley. And yet, you see the movie, you can't watch anyone but Marlon. I mean, really, with all due respect, he'd walk off the screen and you'd go like this, say, where's he going? I mean, he had this life and he brought this energy. He personalized every ounce of that part.
How much did it cost for a string of furs like that?
Why, these were tributes from an admirer of mine.
He must have a lot of admiration.
Even today,
I'm awed by it. I've never seen De Niro have moments like that. I've never seen Pacino have moments like that.
He kind of freed theatrical tradition from words. Words were not as important as behavior, as action. I mean, when you think of him as Stanley, prowling around the stage, throwing dishes, it was a new kind of acting.
Made famous by Brando, this version of method acting taught actors to use their imaginations and their observations of the world around them in order to give more believable performances.
After that, it was hard to put up with bad acting. You just had to throw all that out. You say, wait a minute, we've seen Marlon. We've been to the mountain already, you know. We can't be fooled anymore.
The new star brought a range of complexity that was shocking.
You see, up until that moment, movie heroes, they were unitary. Gary Cooper might have troubles along the way, but you understood who he was, and that he wasn't going to surprise you by turning crazy mean in the middle of the movie. But Brando really played those moments in Streetcar, and you never knew quite exactly what he was.
You got plenty of room to get by me now. You think I'm going to interfere with you?
Stanley Kowalski's complexity came from something deep within Brando himself. Kim Hunter starred as Stella opposite Brando in both the Broadway and screen versions of Streetcar.
I was having certain problems and so forth about how I would feel about Stanley at various moments. I remember Kazan telling me, forget the name Stanley. Just make your relationship with Marlon. You can call him Stanley, but it's Marlon.
To many, there didn't seem to be much difference between the on-screen character and the off-screen man.
You never know where the hell he was going to sleep. You don't know whom he was with. You don't know whom he was running away from. You don't know whom he was angry about. You never knew. Every day there was a drama that he brought with him.
This was true even during the theater version of Streetcar. Between his scenes, Brando used to box with a stagehand backstage.
He got hit badly in the nose. And when he came up for the final scene, he was bleeding. It was coming down. Of course, he was taken off to the hospital. Actually, we all thought he really looked much better after the nose was broken. He looked more real.
The blurring of man and character haunted Brando for years after his Streetcar days.
People invariably associated me with the part I played, so that it was difficult to believe that I didn't eat off the floor, or that I didn't run up the street with my shoes off. And so it's been a hard thing sort of living that down.
Years later, when Robert Duvall starred with him in the 1966 film The Chase, he was struck by Brando's seamless conversion into character.
I remember he was talking to somebody, they said action, and it was the same. It was the same as before and after and during the take. So from Brando, I learned that you minimize or totally neutralize any sense of a beginning. It's just a continuation now and before, action, during, and cut, and afterwards.
At times, his ability on set to merge the man with the character could be disturbing to his fellow actors. Martin Sheen starred with Brando in Francis Ford Coppola's 1979 film Apocalypse Now.
In the scene at the very end, I get into the temple, and you see my shadow bring the implement up. I'm going to cut his head off. Halfway down the dolly, he turns and he looks at me right in the eye, and he says, "Pray for your father." And I dropped the thing, and Francis says, "What's wrong? What happened? Why'd we stop the shot?" And I said, I don't know.
Brando, the actor, had improvised a line that so acutely tapped into Sheen's feelings about his own father that it accomplished what Brando's character needed.
Marlon was just looking for a way to stop me from killing him. So he totally disarmed me. He looked me in the eye and he said, "Pray for your father." Where's that come from?
The origins of Brando's psychologically complex acting lie in a painful past that fueled his creative fire. And when we return...
He'd walk away, and I'd say to myself, where's the bastard walking away to?
Both the pulsing passion that Brando brought to his early film roles and his lifelong struggle against establishment convention are rooted in his painful past. Born in Omaha, Nebraska in 1924, the youngest of three siblings, Brando grew up in small-town Illinois.
His father was named Marlon Brando Sr. and was a traveling salesman who traveled all over the country and was a great womanizer and drinker. Very rarely came home, and when he did, he would always get into terrible fights with his wife, Dodie.
Dodie Brando was a skilled actress in the local theater, but also an alcoholic and an inconsistent mother.
The neighbors talked about how the peanut butter jar had to be kept on a low shelf at the Brando household because Dodie was frequently not there. There were times when these kids had to go and pull her out of jail.
Brando's abilities and his strong personality were evident from an early age.
He was a very imaginative little boy. He was a mimic from the time he was a kid. He was just an incredible performer always. Very rebellious, got into trouble all the time at school.
Sent by his father in 1941 to military academy in Minnesota, at age 17, Brando stood out in school plays, but was expelled after little more than a year. He never finished high school, and in 1943 moved to New York to live with his sister. He signed up for acting classes at the New School for Social Research, and there met a renowned actress and teacher who would change his life forever, Stella Adler.
Marlon Brando managed to survive those critical late adolescent years of his thanks to Stella. What Stella did is allowed Marlon to find himself as an actor.
Influenced by the old Yiddish theater of her parents, Adler studied with Russian theater great Konstantin Stanislavski and then developed her own training for actors. She encouraged her students to use their imaginations to find the deeper truth in any role they were playing. From the start, Brando stood out from his classmates.
Stella asked the class to imitate a chicken, which I knew that a hydrogen bomb was about to go off. And all the other kids in the class started doing crazy stuff like jumping around, flapping wings, making crazy sounds. Marlon just sat there, motionless, soundless. And Stella said, "Marlon, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm being a chicken, sitting, waiting for a hydrogen bomb to explode, which the chicken doesn't know is a hydrogen bomb." This is the kind of originality, the freshness that Marlon would bring to a role.
This early originality would be visible throughout his career. Always a master of improvisation, Brando starred in the 1976 film The Missouri Breaks, in which he plays a bloodthirsty bounty hunter who meets an ugly end. Playing opposite Jack Nicholson, a reformed cattle rustler, Brando reinvented his character daily.
There's one left. I doubt it.
They improvised constantly. Brando came on not thinking that the script was that good, and so he created this unbelievable character who began speaking first in an Irish brogue, then in an English accent, then in a Western drawl.
You pampered the man, and the result of this is the loss of this poor man's life.
He somehow makes it work.
Finding unexpected ways of making things work became a hallmark of Brando's style. And from his earliest days in New York City, he learned to use the world around him for inspiration.
There was a cigar store. It was the Optimum cigar store, and the actors all used it because it had a wall of telephone booths. And he said, "I used to love just getting in a booth at the Optimum and just watching life go by." So he was a great observer of humanity.
Throughout his career, Brando used his powers of observation. Playing opposite Martin Sheen in the 1979 film Apocalypse Now, he improvised a scene with tribal children that was ultimately cut from the final film.
Marlon told the interpreter that these children should annoy him in any way that they wanted. That they should stick their fingers in his ears, in his nose, in his mouth. They should tap on his head while he's going to enact this scene with me. And he's sitting down there like Buddha, and he says, August 13th, 1968. A troop of Viet Cong were trapped by a troop of... And one of these children would start messing with her. He's speaking Vietnamese to these children. It's not Vietnamese. He pulls it off like he is this great God to these children. And he's in charge of it, and they do whatever he says. That's the genius of Marlon Brando.
Brando's improvisational risk-taking was first encouraged by his mentor and teacher, Stella Adler. Stella's daughter, Ellen, has known Brando since she was a teenager.
I think that when Brando went to her, it was a fortunate choice because at that time, he was fragile. He was a baby, and he was a very, very tortured young man.